All right. Okay. We are live. Welcome, everyone. So if we have any viewers, please go ahead and introduce yourself if you are logged into YouTube, and you can leave a comment. Let us know your name, where you're watching us from, and we will be taking questions from you at some point in the broadcast as well. So make sure that chat function is operational for you. We're going to get started in just a minute or two. So we already have one of our fabulous authors online here, and we're expecting to have several more join us in just a bit. So this is the second session. The first one happened on Friday. And okay, we have another person joining. Yay. And there's a recording of that on the YouTube channel. So if you missed Fridays, you can also catch that one as well. And we had 4 writers join us for the broadcast on Friday. We had Bobby Simmons, Dr. Mary Hendrickson, Kashish Lewis, and Stephanie Brown. So those were our writers on Friday. So for today, though, we have 9 writers scheduled. So that's the most people I've had on a live call all at once. So we'll get a lot of good discussion, a lot of good dialogue, a lot of good poetry and prose. So the writers that are scheduled, hopefully they can all actually join the call. You know, technology is sketchy sometimes. But if all goes well, we'll be hearing from Lilith Tijerina. And I hope I'm saying that right, because I've only ever read their names. This is my first time communicating with all of them live. Monique Desir, Vanessa Ojeda Gomez, Nicolette Davis, Brianna Bennett, Morgan Frazier, Dion Self, Brianna Wright, and Camille Bruce. And so today's session will also be recorded. So if you miss something, if you have to step away, go to the restroom, if you have to go grocery shopping or attend a meeting at some point, you can still watch the entire thing because we'll be recording it and it will be on the YouTube channel as well. All right, so I'm checking my emails here, see if I can help some of our other authors get on. All right. Lilith, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you see me? I don't know.
We can't see you. We can hear you.
That's so weird. Okay, give me a second.
Okay.
It's not working, and I don't know why.
Where's my computer?
Are you on phone or computer?
I'm on my laptop currently.
Okay. So at the top, there's a microphone and a camera. The slash. Hey.
Yeah, and it says it's on. I don't know why it's not actually showing me. It's just black.
Can y'all
I
see
see Nicolette. Hi, Nicolette.
Hey,
How are you?
y'all?
Good. Nicolette, are you in Baton Rouge?
I am.
Yay! Tell all my VR folks I said hi. All of them.
You're not here anymore?
No, I'm in Springfield, Illinois as of August. This is my new home now.
Oh, okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool. Well, I'm sure the city misses you.
Yeah. And the weather here is so different. I'm getting used to the snow.
Can you see me now?
Yes.
Cool, awesome.
You got it to work.
Hi.
Hey. So for people who are tuning in, for our audience members, we have 3 writers that have just joined. And we have hopefully 6 more that will be joining at some point during the call. But this is day 2, so we had 4 different writers the day before. So these, I'm going to do some introductions, general information about what is colorism, how the writing contest got started. Then I'll introduce the authors one by one, and you will get to hear them say a little bit about themselves if they care to do so, and read some of their work, which is an honor to have. And I have been emailing all of them for months. So it's a joy to actually be able to see your faces, your lovely faces, and get to hear your voices and hear you actually read the work that I've been reading over here. So check my email one last time. Okay. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna kind of monitor my email to make sure our other authors can join when they are ready. But to start, I'll introduce myself. So I'm not sure who all is familiar with who I am, those of you who are watching, but I am the newly minted Dr. Sarah Webb. So I just graduated with my PhD from LSU, and I am now a new assistant professor at the University of Illinois in Springfield. And I teach English, primarily creative writing, poetry, some nonfiction. And in 2013, I started a blog called Colorism Healing. It had began with just a few posts, but for those of you who know a little bit about websites, you can check your analytics. So one of the things I noticed in tinkering around the inside of my website was that people were searching in Google and Yahoo for poems about colorism. So I thought, that's interesting that people are continuing to search for poetry specifically. So not just about essays on colorism or information on colorism, but they wanted to see poetry about colorism. So I looked around online, looked through some different books, and it was very difficult to find poetry that was accessible, that was clearly marked as being about colorism. So that kind of birthed the idea to start a contest. And so the first contest happened in 2014, and back then it was strictly poetry. And in 2017 actually, I opened it up to essays and prose and that sort of thing. And I've published now 3 books, right, that feature the contestants who have submitted poetry and have won and have written beautiful work. And some of the things I like best about the contest over the years is that it's extremely diverse, especially this year. This year we have more international writers than we've had ever before. There are people of all ages. So Bobby Simmons, who was on the call on Friday, announced to all of us that she's now 60 years old, right? But we also have writers who are as young as 16 years old. So we have a wide range of people in terms of age. We have people who speak different languages, different skin tones, right? So we're thinking about colorism. We get perspectives from people across the human spectrum of skin tones. And that is, I think, one of the primary goals, right, is to raise awareness about all people and for us to see how colorism does touch all of us in various ways. Sometimes different ways, but in a lot of ways it's a similar case, even though we are all different. So I also want to thank you. I want to take a moment to give gratitude to all of you for tuning in, but also anyone who has ever bought a book, anyone who's ever shared a Facebook post or liked an Instagram photo. Your attention and your support means a lot to me, but it also means a lot to the cause, right? So colorism is an issue that is huge. It's international, right? And so it's going to take all of us doing whatever little thing we can. So I thank all of you, but there are a few people I want to call by name. So in the past 5 years, there are people who have really stepped in and stepped up when I've reached out to them. So I want to start with my judges. Couldn't do the contest without all of you. So over the years, these are people from 2014 till now. Judges have been Opal Parma Adisa, Sharon G. Flake, Kalita Rawls, Jeffrey Ann Wilder, Kiara Lee, Alejandra Torres, Amaris Wilson, Benjamin Washington, and Donnie Rose. I've had cover artists, Camille Hoffman, who did, this is her artwork on the cover of the first book, Tony Point and Alicia Fields, who did the second book, and Antoine Ghost Mitchell, who did the current cover. I've also had financial sponsors over the years. So those include Dr. Susan Weinstein, Valentine's Bridal, Mariel Long, Janice Ledette, Jandel Crutchfield, Flora Point, Tony Point, Alicia Fields, and the Black Girls Being Fund with Leslie Mack. So much thanks to all the people I've just named, as well as everyone for any bit or ounce of support you have given over the years. Hi, Stephanie. Hey. Welcome. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I can invite. Okay, so I'm going to try to invite this author here. All right, so hopefully that'll work for Morgan. So what is colorism? For those of you who are watching who have never heard this term, maybe you saw this event shared on Facebook, and you're like, what is this about? So colorism is a system, a social system. Hey, Morgan, glad you can make it. A social system in which people are judged, are valued based on their skin tone, regardless of their race. So it's less about a racial category and more about the actual pigmentation of your skin, more about the texture of your hair, the shape of your nose, right? All these features that we associate with race, like skin color. We have a system in which people are placed into a hierarchy, right? That social status. So that's what colorism is. So now we have these great authors who are going to read some of their pieces. And I think when you hear them read about colorism, if you haven't heard about it before, you're going to get a sense of the nuances that come into play when we talk about colorism, all the different facets of it, and how it manifests in various ways in people's lives, either personal experiences or observations they've witnessed in their own lives. Okay. So we're going to start. Do any of you want to start first in particular?
No.
No. Okay, I can go in the order that you joined the call. Okay, so we'll have Monique. Monique, I'm going to read your bio, and then you can add any words that you have, or you can just launch right into reading your piece. Okay. So Monique Desir, am I saying your last name right?
Perfect.
Okay. Monique L. Desir is the author of the middle grade novel Moonstruck and the adult urban fantasy Forbidden. She enjoys working up a sweat with Zumba. You know, hey, I like that too. And binge watching forensic TV shows. So kudos to binge watching. She lives with her husband and 3 sons in Florida. So we have a lot of people calling in from Florida these days.
Oh,
Monique, the microphone is now yours.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I'm honored. I'm so happy I learned about Dr. Sarah L. Webb. And I had written this story about a little Black girl with albinoism. And I refashioned it into prose poetry for this awesome contest. It's called Souls Within. I'm also a school teacher, so I tapped into that. I'll read a little bit of it. I don't know, am I allowed to read all of it, or do I just read?
Yeah, you can read the whole thing.
Okay.
If you feel comfortable.
At lunchtime, I usually sit alone, but today I'm in the presence of my enemies, as my grandma Vera puts it. Classmates sit around me wearing ear-to-ear grins. They play with their food. No, they're really toying with me. Stop it. Stop staring at me, I whisper, bowing my head. My insides twist into knots. You talk so white. It's Reggie. He has bullied me since kindergarten. Laughter follows, feeding the pain I feel inside. Let's paint her white, Reggie offers. I squirm under the scrutiny of their darkly colored eyes. eyes so unlike mine own. Too late, ghost girl's already white. More laughter. I stare into the palms of my hands and see the color of a bowl of milk. Voices fade. My mind hurries to a place where no one can hurt me, home in the loving embrace of my parents. The ringing of the bell brings me back. I hurry to the growing line of children. Our teacher, Mrs. Griffith, leads us back to class, and we follow her like a string of pearls, quiet and orderly. Math time is next. 5 plus 5 equals 10, 2 plus 2 equals 4. And I wonder how black plus black equals white. My mom and dad are black people with dark brown skin, black hair, and eyes the color of the earth after a rain. How did they end up with me, a white-skinned girl with yellow hair and blue eyes, so pale they look transparent? One word, albinism. Jewel, my teacher calls, snapping me out of my thoughts. I look at her, waiting. Please share your answer to number 7. I nod. If my mother were here, she'd know I had spaced out. Good thing Mrs. Griffith isn't like Mom. I use my magnifying glass to see the problem better. Besides having pale skin, I'm legally blind, and the whiteboard's glare makes reading and writing on the board difficult. I use the paper and markers Mrs. Griffith provides and answer the problem with ease. I hold up my work. Her face lights up. Well done, Jewel. Math is sensible with its numbers and symbols that do what they say and say what they mean. It reminds me of music with its scales and notes. At home, my parents ask if something's wrong, but I won't tell them. They give me extra hugs. After dinner, I sing This Little Light of Mine, while Dad accompanies me with his guitar. As soon as I finish brushing my teeth, Mom even throws in a second story at bedtime. Kisses me on my forehead and rubs her nose against mine. Eskimo kisses, she calls them before leaving. Once the lights are out, the darkness embraces me, and under the covers, I cry. The following day at lunch, I avoid going into the cafeteria. Mrs. Griffith looks concerned. What's wrong? Aren't you hungry, Jewel? No, I'm okay. Yesterday, I noticed a lot of laughter at your table. Now's my chance. I want to tell her so badly, but my mouth remains shut, like a pearl-bearing oyster. She sends me in anyway, but doesn't leave my side. After lunch, Mrs. Griffith announces that our class will host its very own talent show on Friday, 3 days from now. Excited conversations bubble all around us as I sink into my seat. What will I do? What can I do? I sink lower, wanting to disappear. What do you mean, what can you do? Dad asks, once I tell him the news after school. You can sing, girl. Mom tells me I can wear one of my Easter Sunday dresses. For 3 days, I practice singing with Dad, on the way to and from school, before and after dinner, and alone while I'm taking a shower. Friday comes and I'm afraid. Even with Dad walking by my side as we hurry to my classroom, my legs are overcooked spaghetti. How funny Dad and I must look. My dad, a tall black man with the milky smooth brown of a Hershey's chocolate bar, holding hands with me, this little white-skinned girl the color of vanilla ice cream. I squeeze his hand tighter before taking my seat. Mrs. Griffith calls students to show off their talents. Reggie, the boy that threatened to paint me white, does magic tricks with cards and silk handkerchiefs, I clap for him. Finally, it's my turn. I rise out of my seat and hold my head high, striding to the front of the classroom. Dad has already made me himself comfortable, his guitar propped in his lap as he perches on a stool. His wide face bears a big toothy grin, and I can't help but smile too. I face my classmates, and I shut my eyes tight. I open my mouth and sing as the buoyant beauty of my dad's guitar carries me like a boat, bobbing beneath starlight. I sing from the depths of my soul. I continue singing, and my voice is a kaleidoscope of rainbow colors. This little light of mine, a rapturous red, I'm gonna let it shine, an overjoyed orange. This little light of mine, yellow learning to be gold. I'm gonna let it shine, gem-like green. Let it shine, blazing blue. Let it shine, illuminating indigo. Let it shine, vivid violet. Still singing out in my eyes, glancing at each and every one of my classmates, pulling them to look at me, to see me. They're all staring back, but this time it's different. And then they smile. Soulful smiles that touch their eyes. One by one, students clap. The applause is the sweetest music to my ears. My eyes are drawn to Mrs. Griffith, standing on the other side of the room. We share a smile. Maybe, just maybe, she is like Mom and knows more than she lets on. Either way, it's clear to me that she knows what I've known all along. We are more than our skins. We are our talents and our souls within. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to quietly clap for that. Thank you for sharing that story. It's so good to hear you read it because I still remember the first time I read that piece, and I'm sure I'm going to have memories of reading all of your pieces for the first time. Okay, so I think the next person to join the call was Lilith. Hi, Lilith. Hi. And is your last name pronounced Tijerina?
It's pronounced Tijerina.
Tijerina. Gotcha. All right. So Lilith Tijerina is a 19-year-old. Are you still 19?
Actually, I just turned 20.
Just turned 20. Happy birthday. So Lilith is a 20-year-old student from San Antonio, Texas. She is a multidisciplinary artist and with a focus in lighting design, fancy, performance art, and poetry. She also participates in theater that revolves around social justice and activism. Very exciting. Lilith, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. Yeah, so I started writing poetry as a freshman in high school. That's when I started doing theater. And the theater that I was brought up to do was work that was for social change. And like most theater artists in San Antonio, they would do work that was written by others, like Shakespeare or stuff like that. But the program that I joined was specifically dedicated to social justice and activism that was written by the students. And so I didn't really know that much about activism or any type of social justice. In fact, like when I grew up, due to colorism for the most part, I was very much against like accepting my culture. I'm a Chicana, which means I have roots in Mexico, but I'm born in America. And so you know, the colorism in Mexico is like a whole, it's its own other systemic like oppression. So I grew up being against Mexicans and like everything that was, you know, that I wanted to embrace. I didn't learn Spanish growing up. I didn't want to, but just because of the way that I was treated. And actually, so I have a twin as well. And so we both had the same experiences, and it was just this thing that we shared was this bullying that, you know, revolved around our skin tone. All of our friends were really lighter than us, and so it was always the slight microaggressions in the comments that are like, "Oh, you're so dark," and you know, that type of stuff. So I wrote this poem when I was starting because I was told that you know, my experiences were experiences shared through a lot of people, and so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just write about it to see like what it will do. So yeah, the poem that I'm gonna read is called Yellow. The color didn't favor my muddy skin, didn't hug it or caress it, love it like it loved my best friend's sleeves. But the sun loved me, he did. He followed me everywhere, even with my rejections and denials blanketing my skin with SPF. He still loved me, and I embraced it. He never showed my friends that love. Summer was black sweaters, black jeans was my way of avoiding him, but swim days were his favorite, and he'd engulf me with his rays, enough for my friends to say, there's no way you could get darker. But the sun could not love me anymore when I made myself black and invisible. So he left me with sweat and regret, and I allowed him. No one should see this muddy skin. And I don't blame only him. This skin of dirt was a result of a beautiful dark man and a beautiful woman with once skin of ebony, now yellow. And I could never fit into the word beautiful, like how I never thought I could fit into blue contacts or a yellow wig or the color yellow, but being 13 years old meant yellow. Lemons were my favorite fruit, but not for tea or for lemonade or for tacos, but for soaking cotton balls with its sour juice and rubbing hard on my skin because I heard the acid could make Mexican disappear. I wanted to wear yellow without my leather skin in contrast. I wanted to think yellow without people wondering if I was my mother's daughter. I wanted to be yellow. No questions. The benefit of the doubt. The next step, the next level, the next class. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you. I just want to acknowledge the fact that you're wearing yellow today. I love that. And you look beautiful in it as well. Thank you for doing that. So for any viewers who are just tuning in, you are in the right place. I promise you. This is where you want to be. The live book launch for Colorism Essays and Poems Volume 2. So we've had two of our authors read so far, Monique and Lilith, and we're going to keep going into a few more authors. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's Nicolette, my homegirl from Baton Rouge, yes. was the third person to join the call. So Nicolette, I'm going to introduce you, and then you will have the floor. Nicolette Davis. Am I pronouncing that right? You can always just interrupt me, any of you.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Nicolette has been writing since she was old enough to hold a pen and too young to understand the concept of words and letters. When she's not writing, singing off key, I can't sing either, so I understand that, or reading, she's working full time at the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. She truly has a passion for librarianship and literacy. Currently, she's a graduate student at LSU, pursuing a master's degree in library and information science. She's a proud member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And you're representing them today, too, in the video. I see your chair. Nicolette, take it away.
Hello, everybody. As I said, I have been writing since I was just too young to understand words. I would write like in my little Snow White books and look at the pictures and tell my own stories, basically. And funny thing about the story that I wrote, I was locked out of my house one night, and it was the day that the stories were due. And I was like, I have to finish this story because I wrote 2, but I have to finish this story. So I quickly wrote it in an hour, and I was like, this is terrible. It's never going to win anything. So if you're writing and you feel like your story is, not going to be, live up to expectations, just keep writing because you never know the potential in it. So I'm going to read Biting My Tongue. And it's based on a combination of my experiences, stories that I heard from my mom, who was very dark-skinned, and family members. I think a lot of us have all dealt with family members who are, against dark skin or prefer light skin or, that kind of thing. So I'm going to start reading. Okay. My sister and I plan to go out to our aunt's new bar and lounge, the newest hotspot in Ascension Parish. We picked out cute, shimmery dresses and rolled our hair on big pink rollers the night before. My sister Joy wanted to look like Whitney Houston, but I just wanted to look cute enough to dance. As we dressed, I turned on the radio and the infectious beat of Bobby Brown's Don't Be Cruel filled the room. I think it's human nature to be competitive with siblings, no matter how much you love them. I danced across the room, taunting Joy with my footwork as she sat at the vanity table. She had 2 left feet and could never dance. Stop all that bouncing around. Your hair is going to fall flat. She stood up and came over to me to fluff my hair as I finally settled down. So, I don't care. I like to dance. You're not coming with me looking like a bird. You'll have enough time to dance at Auntie's. I shrugged and allowed her to perfect my hair. She was better at curling hair than I was. I was a self-proclaimed tomboy, while she was the prissy one. We couldn't be more opposite if we tried. She was tall, light-skinned with brown hair. I was short, fat, and a very dark shade of brown. My hair was even naturally jet black. Everyone called her pretty all the time. Auntie is going to be so surprised to see us. I'm sure she's going to go over the top when she sees us. You know how she is. Joy nodded. Yeah, she's going to have that Polaroid camera ready. We both laughed and finished getting ready. Joy did my hair and makeup and picked out my dress. She ushered me into the mirror, smiling at me, her muse. Damn, I'm good, she said. I rolled my eyes. I look pretty good. My dress had fresh shoulder pads, black and green sequins across the top, and made me feel fancy. Joy wore a nice short brown skirt, matching brown leggings, and a pink off-the-shoulder top. She looked pretty good, too. The 45-minute drive to Ascension was uneventful. I couldn't move because Joy said I'd ruined my hair or outfit. I couldn't even shake my shoulders when Shaka Khan's I Feel For You played on the radio. It was one of my favorites. When we arrived at the bar, it was around 9:30 p.m. and it was already nearly packed. Some of our cousins worked the door. "Hey, cousin," one of them said to me. "Hey, pretty girl," the other said to Joy. We hugged and briefly chatted before they let us in the smoke-filled, loud music-filled bar. Keith Sweat's I Want Her was blasting and the dance floor was already full. My auntie spotted us as soon as we walked inside. Her arms started flailing. I was walking behind Joy through a crowd and started to smile. Stop that music," she yelled, and suddenly the room was almost quiet. "Look at what's here, my pretty niece from Baton Rouge," she said, pointing in our direction. The crowd began to lightly push my sister up to the front near the DJ setup. My sequins could never shine as bright as her skin. My smile instantly faded as I saw my sister elevated up to the front. People were cheering like she was Whitney Houston. I never felt so distant from her until that moment. None of them ever called me ugly, but they sure never called me pretty either. I swallowed hard, trying not to get upset or seem angry. If I ever said anything, I knew the words jealous would be used, so I tolerated it. I clapped like everyone else.
Thank you, Nicolette. I was actually hoping that would be the one you chose to read.
Yes.
One I highly identify with as well.
Yes.
So I can't wait to launch into the discussion segment of all of this.
Okay.
So I think next we're going to hear from Morgan. Hey, Morgan.
Hi.
Morgan Frazier was born in Baltimore, Maryland. Morgan is currently studying English with a concentration in creative writing at Hood College. Shout out to all the English majors. Along with writing, Morgan enjoys graphic design and hopes to further her education in this field after obtaining her bachelor's next spring. All right, so Morgan, the mic is now yours.
All right. Hi, everyone. So, when I was writing this piece, I didn't really, didn't know exactly what to expect because it was kind of like an odd situation. I was kind of sitting in a hospital with one of my friends, and the words just came to me because I feel like a lot of times we don't really talk about this issue, and I feel like it's an important issue to instill in children at a young age, and especially just talking about it with men because I feel like they kind of don't understand that they can too be a colorist. So that is kind of a little introduction of what I'm going to read. So my poem is called Dear Black Men. So, Dear Black Men, do you know that I'm beautiful? That dash of cinnamon created the mellow milk queen. Quite frankly, I don't give a damn of what you think. You're pretty for a dark-skinned girl as a consolation for the simple fact that I will not and am not put sugar. I'm Cocoa Brown. Do you hear me? And you not oppress me of my blackness. It's called black magic. Dear black men, do you know that you're ignorant because the skin that you're in is in fact and will be black? You can't change that. Dear black men, tilt the crown of your perfectly brown daughter because quite frankly, there will be a you to her heartbreak. So dear black men, do you hear me?
Okay, I think I had my volume down. Hi, Brianna. It says you're muted.
Is it better?
Yes, we got you now. Okay, so we're gonna read your bio, and then you are free to add to it or just launch into reading your piece. So Brianna Bennett is a 19-year-old sophomore studying environmental studies and political science at Merrimack College. She loves to discuss prominent issues and explore powerful poetry. In 2017, she won first place in HHS Slam Poetry and second in the MA Poetry Out Loud Finals. So we have a true poet in the house. Take it away. The stage is yours.
Thank you. I just want to say, I think I have bad connection, so if my voice goes in and out, I'm sorry. So my poem's called The Pillars of Privilege. What if we were each given a pamphlet to highlight the hierarchy of racial bias in our society? What if skin tone preferences were clearly spelled out for all the school children on their first day of kindergarten? Colorism, like the ABCs or 1, 2, 3s. A problematic, systematic failure of society to be taught in every school to every child. In a little white pamphlet with big black letters. You are not equal. You will never be equal. Please don't try to be equal. We don't like that. Sorry. Signed and notarized by societal institutions everywhere. How would a young, dark brown Filipino boy feel if he could read a pamphlet that explained he had less rights than a Filipino boy, the same age, the same gender, the same race? Don't cry. It's nothing personal. It's ingrown. On average, the darker-skinned boy won't have the same opportunities as the lighter boy. At least children would no longer grow up hopeful and misinformed. At least they wouldn't expect much from the world they were born into or the body they were born in. A pamphlet wouldn't change much, just spelling out a tragic history for the darker kids among us all. Everyone would learn that the lighter you are, the more that you've got, but the darker the skin, the more likely to be caught for a crime you probably didn't commit, but your skin is dark, so the probability fits. It's called the Pillars of Privilege, and it's more than race. It's the high demand for a lighter skin tone to survive makes you stay indispensable and unreplaced. The thing is, we don't need a pamphlet or simple explanation. Unfortunately, colorism already exists in the preferences and biases exposed in everyday society. There is no pamphlet to burn. There is only ideology to change. We've allowed our society to enchant and entrench appearance discrimination. The ignorance stops now. No more societal pamphlets to perpetuate lighter preferences. No more privilege for people with lighter skin tone. No more color to define who you are or where you'll go. This can't be taken lightly. We are changing the narrative, and we can write a pamphlet on equality and positive ideology. We will remove colorism one pillar at a time. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Brianna. So I am glad that you read that piece because privilege is a loaded word. A lot of people don't like that word. So again, going to have our last author read so that we can get into discussions of all these things. So Stephanie, welcome back. So Stephanie Brown. Well, actually, Stephanie, I do not have your bio from Friday because I have a different sheet here. But if you would, please go ahead and introduce yourself and then you can read your piece as well.
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Stephanie Brown. My bio that she read would have said that I'm from sunny South Florida, which is totally true. I'm now in Atlanta though, but still love for Florida. I am a Jamaican descendant, and that is the basis of a lot of the work that I do. I am a practicing artist, multiple disciplinary as well. Got a background in photography, installation art, writing, and some sculptural elements as well. For the past 2 years, my work has been focused on colorism and Black representation. And I've also have had a focus on looking at the effects of colorism by way of media. So my piece is called Transcendental Shame, and it was actually written as an artist statement. So for anyone who has been to a gallery, it's very common that, you know, when you go to a gallery and you see artwork, you'll see that like description or the name of the piece or like a written part that goes with it. And those are hard to write. And I always had trouble writing them. And the Lilith like snaps. So a method that ended up working for me is I started creating poems in lieu of my artist statements. And I found that by way of poetry, I was able to better articulate what it is that I was hoping to get from the art pieces. And this poem, Transcendental Shame, actually pairs with the body of work that I did discussing skin color as costume. So I'll go ahead and read. Transcendental Shame. I used to wish I was white. I'm ashamed I rejected myself. I'm ashamed I thought I was right. I'm ashamed I thought I could pass. I am ashamed. Skin bleaching causes cancer. Cutting myself heals black. I didn't want those blue eyes. I didn't want that pale skin. I wanted something I could not even find. I used to wish my hair could fall flat. I'm ashamed I ran from the rain. I'm ashamed I burned my hair straight. I'm ashamed I wasn't enough. I'm ashamed I didn't like me. One day, my puff didn't puff. I had finally had enough. I loved the rain and wanted to play. And to do so, I sacrificed myself. Drenched every curl on my head, saturated the life back into them. Resurrected from the hands of death, my crown floats in the wind. Has the strength of silk. Smells like the greatest Egyptian perfume you could have dreamed up yourself. My hair is my pride. Samson, I feel you, brother. Short, medium, or long, I rock them all with no help of scissors. Volume is the greatest gift, and shrinkage is my friend. You should be mesmerized. I'm stunned myself.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, so I think everyone on the call currently has been able to read. So I got a message saying that there's no sound. I don't know if live viewers who are logged into YouTube can actually leave a comment to let me know if you can hear the sound. So please just say yes, I can hear you, or no, there's no sound, so that we know for sure. And there's a slight delay in us talking and what's actually being broadcast live. So I'm going to wait a few seconds to see if we get any comments so people can let us know if they hear us. Okay, so we have Blue Tweety 12 who says, yes, I can hear you. Good. Because what we have people saying is very valuable, and I don't want to miss any of it, even not just for the live stream, but even for the recorded version of this video. I want people to hear all of what you have to say. So we're going to go into our Q&A, our discussion, which means that people who are watching live, if you have a comment for any of our writers or for all of our writers, or if you have questions, or if you have a general statement about colorism or about poems and stories and essays about colorism, please go ahead and start to leave those in the comments now. So I'm going to start with a general question, and all of you can respond as you see fit. So my question to all of you is, why was it important for you to write the piece that you wrote and to share it publicly? So some of you kind of addressed this in your intros, in the words that you said beforehand. But what inspired you to go ahead and push the submit button and share your story with a broader audience?
Well, speaking for me personally, I was really nervous writing the poem and when considering whether or not I should submit. And the more I thought about it, and the more I learn in school and whatnot, in my social justice classes and everything, it's just that, like, it's important for people that have privilege in areas like I'm of a lighter skin tone, and so I know it's good to be aware if you carry a certain privilege so that you know how to use that in society and how to change things for everyone else. Because honestly, I think people that have privilege and don't utilize that are of the problem. I think that I felt really encouraged to submit it because I felt like I was speaking on something that people with privilege need to speak on, and need to stand up and talk about. And when I read the poem, it's difficult to read because I take it from the standpoint of like saying, what if we told it like it is, that society's not fair, and it's really awful to like read personally because I don't want to hear that, but I think it's important. So submit button.
Yeah, I think I'm glad to hear you say that it was difficult for you to decide to submit, and that even now that it's published, that it's still somewhat difficult for you to even read it out loud. Because one of my mottos in life is courage, and one of the values or foundational principles around the work I do around colorism is very much about courage, because I think addressing this issue, whether it be from a position of privilege or whether it be from someone who has been discriminated based on colorism, has been hurt by colorism, right, who's felt shame, it takes courage to look within and to heal your wounds from the past. It takes courage to look within and say, hey, I actually am complicit in this in some way. I actually have perpetuated this in some way, or I actually benefit from colorism in some way. All of that takes courage. And it takes courage also to sit and listen, right? So I appreciate you for sharing and for also being here to participate in the conversation. And there are so many people from different vantage points who still have not found the courage to do that yet. But hopefully if they see this, they will be encouraged. So other thoughts? Are you raising your hand?
Yeah, raising my hand. I think I wrote the story that I read, well, both of the stories that I wrote, in honor of my mom, because she dealt with it terribly. She was born in the 60s, and growing up, that's just how things were. And, it wasn't right, it wasn't fair, but she would always say, that's just how it is. And with her sister being light-skinned, and in her family, it was like the first child was light-skinned, dark-skinned, light-skinned, dark-skinned. So, like, they got treated differently, not by my grandparents, but just by other people because it was dark light, dark light. And that's just how things were. And, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. So I wrote my stories, really as an ode to her. She's now deceased. So, just to get her stories out there, her words, the things that she taught me, and to let, the world know that this isn't right. This isn't fair. It shouldn't just be like this, So that's what gave me the courage to submit my story.
Yes, thank you for sharing that background information. I think that is a beautiful ode to your mother. And I think it is so important, too, when we speak, we do speak for people who are no longer able to, right? We have ancestors centuries back, right, who have endured colorism and all of the other related social problems that come with that. And they didn't have these opportunities, right? They didn't have YouTube live streams. They didn't have, contests about colorism. So I applaud you for taking up that mantle for your mom specifically. And that particular story resonated with me because I also have a light-skinned sister. And what you reveal, hey, we have a new caller. What you reveal in that is that sometimes it's what people say to you. Like, so they might say, oh, you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl. They might, call you tar baby, or they may say you look like a monkey. But a lot of times, and Lilith mentioned this too in terms of microaggressions, right? A lot of times the microaggression is them simply not saying anything, right? So I love that your story highlights that you don't have to actively be bullying me or actively be trying to discriminate against me. Sometimes it's all in what you fail to do, right? Which neglect to do. So thank you for sharing that. Other thoughts? And we have a new caller. I'm trying to scroll down to access your name. Can you introduce yourself? I can't see your Dion. Dang, Dion, welcome. You made it.
Yes, finally. Sorry, you guys.
So I've asked the current writers to talk more about what inspired them to write this piece and to be willing to share it publicly with a broader audience. And so once everyone's had a chance to speak, we're going to circle back around and introduce you to the viewers as well.
Okay.
Oh, Monique?
Yeah, I have been researching genetics and color, and I had heard about people that are albinos, but I didn't understand why or what was going on the African continent. And then I watched a documentary on Netflix called I think it's Black Man, White Skin, and it reveals like what's happening in Tanzania, where these people are being kidnapped, they're being mutilated and hurt because their skin doesn't look like the majority of Tanzanians that live there. Just really very sad stuff. So I was like, what would happen if this little girl has this issue in the States? And that's where the story came from. That we're more than our skin color, and it's right. Like with Nicolette,
Yes.
what she said, it's not fair. It's not okay. Where did this all start? I don't think that all human nature is a monolith of this where light skin is favored. I'm sure there's other cultures, and I'm going to research more where maybe the opposite spectrum might be favored. Does it really matter? I don't know. My parents are from the islands. My dad's from Haiti, and my mom's from Jamaica, where colorism is also an issue there as well. Or that if you have really light skin, people are mean to you, but you're still favored for some bizarre reason. They'll call you like a yellow gal or mean things, but it's like, even though it's mean, it's still like, oh, she's better, she's prettier. It's really interesting. But that's where I got the idea from for Souls Within. And it's an interesting topic because the more we know, the more we're better able to fight against it, to improve things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think research is, I like that you took the initiative, right, to do some additional research on your own. A lot of times people say, we live in the age of information, and that's, to a large extent, that is true for a lot of people. It's not true for everyone. Not everyone has easy access to information like that. For those of us who do, there's really no excuse anymore, especially in 2018, not to understand that colorism exists, that colorism is a thing. So, even watching this live broadcast, right? Like whoever sees this, they now know. If they didn't already, like now they see, all these people, this panel of writers and thinkers who are speaking on this issue. Thank you for sharing that. Any other comments from the other writer? Okay, we have Lilith raising her hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, so when I wrote this, as I said, I was a lot younger, but I definitely wrote it a lot out of anger. I was really, really mad for a long, long time at the fact that I lost so much of my history because I denied it. And there's a lot that I still will never know because I've just let it, not touch me the way that I wish I did. And so a lot of anger as well, just based on the way people treated me growing up. But I hit submit, I guess, because I know that it's so important for us to take up spaces. Like, I think it's come to a point where I've read so many different things that are just, based around white America. And I think I'm tired of hearing about the same stories over and over again that I can't relate to. And I'm tired of watching the same TV shows that don't pertain to me, that I don't understand because I don't, it's not my culture, I guess. And so I think it's just so important for us to take up spaces and just say maybe we have this whole, collective of people who have experienced colorism, but we're going to keep talking about it over and over and over again until maybe it makes a difference. And even if it doesn't, does it really matter if we're able to just take up more art spaces that are just dedicated to people like us, So that I think is the reason why it's so important, just to just continue taking up spaces.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think anger is a very valid emotion. and writing is a safe form of catharsis, right? Because anger can come out in so many destructive ways. So I'm glad you chose writing in particular as a way to express that anger, convey that anger. And I also think you're absolutely right in that we have a right to take up space, right? We have a right to insert ourselves into the conversation, to put ourselves into the forefront. And again, we have way more opportunities to do that now as a result of the work that people have done who come before us to do that work, right? So now that we can, speak up and be seen and be heard. So thank you for sharing that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dion, and then Dion, you can read your piece, and we will launch back into the Q&A once you've done that. Sound good?
Sure.
All right. All right, so Dion Self is an aspiring author and pharmacist. She seeks to motivate and inspire others through her poetry and writings. Her pursuit is to heal and change the world by giving power to the voiceless and strength to the weary. All right, Dion.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dion Self. I wrote this piece. It started off actually as a project for school. I'm in college, and I'm always hunting extra points. So my one of my teachers gave us an assignment. She said, "Okay, well, if you submit a poem or essay to this contest, you'll get extra points." So I really originally did it just to get some points because, I mean, you didn't have to. So I didn't expect anything to become of it. I really just was doing it for the points. So I just kind of just write down, and I said, well, let me just go ahead and jot down, the first thing comes to my mind. And then as I sat there, the wheels start turning in your head, and I said, okay, well, really, what is colorism? So I had to actually go and look at a previous video to find out what colorism was, because I realized I didn't even know what colorism was. So once I found out what it was, and I was like, oh, I do know what it is, but I didn't know it had a name. Like, this has been going on like all my life. Like, I've experienced it, but I never knew that there was a name for it. So I just kind of took a combination of life experiences that I've experienced, other people that I know have experienced, and just kind of just started writing. And my poem is called Where Do I Fit In? Where, oh where do I fit in? From the advertisements in the Sunday paper to the fancy pictures on the perm labels, from the side-eye looks from the sister chicks that say with eyes what I wish I'd forget. If words could kill, I'd be quite dead, for their words hurt more than a sharp sword's edge. I guess it hurts more and pierces oh so deep, because when I see them, I see me, but when they see me, they see freak. I long for the day when I won't have to hear the words. Sisters tell me how I'm made wrong and why I don't belong. My body, too straight, too flat, not curvy enough. My hair, too kinky, too short, not long enough. Billboards and movies show the types that they'll be using. None that look like me. My look is not worth using. So how am I defined when I don't fit between the lines of society or my sisters? Which checkbox is mine? See, the lines of normative have counted me out still, because my dark skin tone says I stay dark way too long. My kinky curls are way too tight. My ebony skin too close to midnight. You're pretty for a dark chick. You need more hips to make those jeans fit. Colorism cuts, colorism blows. Colorism self-hate, my fading ego goes. Each word like a stick pin, a reminder of my tone. Colossal heap of confirmation of how I don't belong. Oh, I've been cut with words, followed by fake smiles. Wounded so many times, the blows make me numb now. Where, oh where, should my nappy hair go? Where can I fit in with my midnight skin's glow? Where, oh where, should my straight physique fit in? I waited for my curves, but they never did fill in. Nowhere do I fit, nowhere do I belong. Guess I'll just be me and write my own song. Smooth midnight skin, kinky curly hair, straight non-curvy figure, You're unique and oh so rare.
Thank you. Yay, Dion. All right. So I want to return to some of the themes that came up in what you all have read so far, and maybe launch a discussion from there. And so I'll start with. So in Monique's poem, Souls Within, there's this moment when the character, Jewel, she says she wills her classmates to see her. And there's this issue about visibility and about being seen. So my question to all of you, you can either talk about the piece that you wrote, or you can speak more to your personal experiences. But in your experience, or in things you've observed about society, about your community, how does colorism affect people's visibility, affect who is seen, who is not seen, who is heard, and who is not heard? Yeah, so I think I'll pose that question to all of you. Have you ever felt invisible or not seen, right? And I know Lilith definitely spoke on that, but others of you who might have had experiences or commentary on how colorism impacts people's visibility.
I'll jump in. I think colorism impacts visibility in so many different ways. You always want to be acknowledged. I think that's just a natural desire. You want to be acknowledged, whether it's from your parents or people at school. You know, if you've got new shoes on, you love to hear someone comment on that. It's affirming. And when you feel inferior because of the color of your skin, you lack moments of that affirmation. And when you see other people get those affirmations or acknowledgments that you're seeking, that can cause you to feel invisible. I think it's very common for anyone who's experiencing colorism to feel invisible. I felt invisible nearly all of my life through school, especially when you go to a school where you're like the only Black child or only student of color. You instantly almost become invisible. And it's ironic because you're standing out, right? And a lot of you are in college too, and I just graduated from a predominantly white college. So, you know, you're seen, right? Because obviously we're aware that you're in the room, but you're not seen because you're not acknowledged and you're not heard. And all those microaggressions just swim over you.
Thank you for that. I think what you were saying about everyone wanting some form of validation, it reminds me of something Oprah has said a lot. Because a lot of times the rhetoric, do you have a new caller? Hey, I was just responding to your email, but I'm glad you could make it on the call. I was going to invite you. I think. So there's some feedback. Make sure that if you're watching the live, separately that you mute that sound. Yeah, so just make sure if there's any sound coming from your environment that you either mute yourself or try to reduce the sound from the environment or the room that you're in. But so Oprah makes a comment a lot that she's interviewed everyone from the First Lady to presidents to billionaires to plumbers and just stay-at-home moms to celebrities and Beyonce and Pharrell, and she's even interviewed the KKK, right? And so she says all the time that the one common factor among all of them is that they just want to know that they're okay. Like they want to know that they are valuable, that they have some type of validation, right? And this is years of her interviewing people. And I think so many times they say, oh, well, validation shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter what other people think of you. Or why do you care if someone compliments you or not, right? In comparison to other people, right? Like your sister. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, like that's part of being human. Humans are social creatures. Humans are designed for connection. We are designed to love, right? We are designed to be loved and receive love. And no, we don't need that from everyone in the world, but we do need it. I think it is part of our hierarchy of needs in terms of being self-actualized and fully developed as a person. Is some of that validation. Yeah, so we have some new callers. I want to jump in and introduce them so that they have their time to shine. So we have Vanessa, who just joined, and we have Brianna. So I think we have two Briannas. But this is Brianna Wright, who just joined as well. I couldn't tell who joined first, but I'm going to introduce you in the order that I have on my bio list, if that's okay. So I'll read your bio and then you can read your piece. And you might want to say a few words as well about why you wrote the piece, what inspired you to submit and that sort of thing. Okay, so Vanessa, so your nickname, is it Vane or Vane? How should I say that?
It's pronounced Vana.
Vana?
Yeah.
All right, so Vana Ojeda Gomez is a law major and creative writing minor, going into her second year at the University of Arizona. She's interested in social and political activism and also performing arts and, of course, poetry. So Vana, the stage is yours.
Hi, so you can call me Vanessa or Vana. It doesn't bother me. So my piece I wrote just throughout my life. I've always been really interested in social and political activism. And throughout my life, people have just kind of always asked me, like, oh, why are you so into this? Like, what does that, yeah. So like, why are you into this? Like, what got you started? And I never really knew how to answer. I never knew how to answer because it's always just kind of been like a combination of things that have kind of been like kickstarters to why I do what I do and why I want to be an activist when I'm older, or well, you know, now. But then one day it kind of just like, there was just this little comment that kind of set it off that made me realize what exactly in my life has put me to where I am today and like the path that I'm taking to becoming an activist and a representative of my community. So my piece is called Where It Started, and I'll just go ahead and get started. So I'll tell you where it didn't start. It didn't start on May 18th on a Tuesday morning in 1999 when the doctors laughed at my overly hyphenated name. Vanessa Isabel Ojeda Gomez Santoyo whatever. It wasn't when my mother said, let's name her something that Americans can pronounce too. Happily introducing me to everyone as if they were ever going to welcome me. And it wasn't when I had the talk, not the birds and the bees, your colitas need to always be apretadas, your hair needs to always be well done. No puedes jugar en la tierra y no puedes caminar sola a la casa. You can't be playing in the dirt and you can't walk home alone. No te veas changa. Don't look like you have something to hide. But remember, you have nothing to prove. Si te preguntan por papeles, no tienes que contestar. If they ask for your papers, you don't have to answer. Diles que tu papá es su soldado. Tell them that my dad is dying for a country that wants him dead. It wasn't when my apá sat me down with the Univision news channel playing in the background, the sobs of my people telling me the world was going to try and build borders around me. It wasn't when the first person to break my heart was actually a series of numbers, an ice-cold combination that unlocked every weakness I had, SB 1070. It didn't start when my people, the conquested, were killed off by my people, the conquistadores, or when the world refused to tell their stories. It wasn't when my identities were banned from my classrooms, or when a school monitor warned me about the books I was reading and how dangerous it could be if I was caught with them. It was when my appa told me he's too scared to wave a Mexican flag. He can't make the wrong people angry. We have to have our allies. It was when I started to forget the street names across the border. It started when the kids at school would ask, "Why do you talk so white?" When I first was taught that being educated must mean being white. It was when my cousins and tias made fun of me during the summertime. "Make sure you stay inside. No te quieres quemar más de lo que ya eres." You don't want to burn yourself anymore. When I was conditioned to believing that growing with the sun rather than away from it was a curse, there must not be sunflowers in the barrios. It was when my counselors told me in 3rd grade, "I think you would make more friends at a school with kids more like you." And it was when I was told I only got interviews to Ivy Leagues because I played the race card. I didn't know my GPA was my blood quantum. It started when I'd had no choice but to go to college. First gens are the bearers of La Raza's crosses that are thrown down at us by the gringos. It started when I stayed up every night con mi mamá studying for the citizenship test. A piece of paper somehow would define her value, a woman with such valor. It was when apparently all my people have to offer are drugs and rapists. It was when I tried to bleach my skin and gave myself hair treatments to tame my curls as if that would stop men from trying to tame my Latina attitude. And it was when I walked into stores, all eyes on me, when I purposely wore my Louis Vuitton bags, my Tiffany earrings, and Kate Spade accessories and Calvin Klein top, just so I could avoid being followed. And it was when the 16-year-old blonde girl behind the register still asked for security. Despite my costume, it was when I realized brands aren't masks. Dollar signs aren't loud enough to silence my rolled R's. It was when I realized I could never rise from 2nd place. Almost, but not quite. Ya casi. It was when I was too American for one home, but too Mexican for the other. And it was when the world showed me they would much rather wake up to blue or green eyes. It was when I finally figured out that if I wanted to be considered, if I wanted to be in the conversation, if I wanted to be in the room where it happened, I'd have to wave my bandera high, have the strongest grito around, and break down these borders, unapologetically y sin miedo. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that beautiful piece. I think there's a lot there too, in your piece as well as other pieces that kind of just reveal that colorism is often primarily about skin tone, but there are so many other aspects about skin tone in terms of our features, and in terms of this desire to be less quote unquote ethnic, right? Or to be less, or to appear less like a person of color and to kind of blend in more with, you know, what white society would deem acceptable. So thank you for sharing that. We're gonna let Brianna Wright read, and then we'll get back into a Q&A. I want to hear more from all of you. So Brianna Wright is a poet whose work predominantly includes topics of love and the African-American struggle. With a passion for African-American studies, she hopes to give the community a voice in her words by illuminating the struggles they endure. So Brianna, you have the mic now.
Hello, everyone. So my passion for poetry started when I was around 12, maybe. I didn't write anything too serious, but I really got into it. And recently, I graduated from UCLA and I minored in African-American studies. And that's when I really started getting into the serious topics of the things affecting the Black community. So I started to write more poetry revolved around that. So my poem is called Melanin Deep. And I'm going to start. Melanin, this beautiful melanin, giving way to a deep brown tint, coating every inch of the skin I'm in. I love the skin I'm in. A canvas to the curls atop my head, kinky and voluptuous. A mind of their own. I envy that freedom. When I walk into an interview, I am chained by my kinks, locked behind bars of judgment. I'm fully clothed in potential, stunning and bright, but it is invisible to your eyes. My deep brown tint muddies your perception, blinding you to my worth. My experience jumps off the page, yet still you look only at my beautiful melanin unfazed. But by my communication skills or 8 years of leadership experience, where I see potential and value, you see immeasurable risk. You listen less to what I'm saying and more to how I am saying it. The historical sound of my ancestors' tongue comes through in my accent. This disturbs you, encourages you to fake your best smile before closing your ears to what I have to say. It doesn't matter that I answer your unoriginal questions with utmost originality. It matters that my accent doesn't fit in. My hair is unprofessional. It matters that my deep brown skin makes you uncomfortable. It matters that my beautiful melanin doesn't quite fit the brand. You shake my hand. Opportunity slips away with the release of our grip. I don't loathe the loss. I'm familiar with the final act. I walk out and you trash my application behind my back. This beautiful melanin, this deep brown tint, these voluptuous curls, prideful on this body, yet forever shamed in the face of opportunity. Melanin, this beautiful melanin, giving way to a golden tint, coating every inch of the skin I'm in. I love the skin I'm in. A canvas to the curls atop my head, smooth and silky, leading the way. I thrive off this freedom. When I walk into an interview, I'm freed by my curls. I escape the entrapment of my hair texture. I'm fully clothed in potential, stunning and bright. You recognize it because my skin is light. My golden tint fails to skew your perspective. Instead, it expands the bounds of my worth to your company. My experience is missing on the page, yet still you look at my beautiful melanin and translate my lack of communication skills or leadership experience into immeasurable potential and value. You listen more to what I'm saying and less to how I'm saying it. Though the historical sound of my ancestors' tongue comes through in my accent, this does not perturb you. You crack your most genuine smile before providing your undivided attention to what I have to say. It doesn't matter that I answer your unoriginal questions with unoriginality. It matters that my accent can be overlooked, my hair is seen as professional. It matters that my golden skin makes you less uncomfortable. It matters that my beautiful melanin can fit the brand. You shake my hand. Opportunity confirmed with the tightness of our grip. I celebrate the win. I'm familiar with the final act. I walk out and place my application at the top of the stack. This beautiful melanin, this golden tint, these silky curls, prideful on this body, less often shamed. Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. So all of these authors who are on the call today and submitted have, as you can see already, very unique experiences and perspectives. And I'm glad we've gotten to hear from all of them so far. But some of them might have to leave early. So if you need to leave early, just raise your hand so I can know. Okay, so I'm going to let the three of you give any final comments or thoughts that you want to say about colorism, about your writing, or the poetry contest, or what people can do to heal themselves or to move forward and spread awareness about colorism. So remember to unmute yourself and then go ahead and say your final thought.
I'll go. Yeah, so thank you so much for this opportunity, Sarah. Like this means so much. I think I've always tried to find ways to expand the audience. When I've read this before, there was tons of different people who would come and just cry and be like, I relate. And so the fact that you have a whole collection of books now that I can read and just do that over and over again, go through that experience is so amazing. So thank you for that. And I guess something that helped me heal was, again, as I said before, was just being unapologetic and taking up spaces. For so long, I silenced myself. I didn't want to talk about, my Mexican heritage. I didn't want to acknowledge it in any way. And so kind of forcing myself to just do this exact opposite helped me a lot. And taking up that space and just not really what other people would say, and just speaking truth. That's all this is. It's just talking from true experiences and just exposing this, I guess the real reality that we all face due to colorism. So thank you so much, and I loved all of your work. It was amazing. So thank you for sharing. And yeah.
Thank you, and keep wearing yellow. Looks great on you.
Thank you so much. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, Monique or Nicolette.
I'll go next because I just kind of want to bounce off of what Lilith said. She mentioned earlier about taking up space as a writer, and how white stories are the stories that we hear so often, or it's about white people telling our stories. And so a few weeks ago, LPB did this survey of America, like of the top books in America, right? And so the top book in America was To Kill a Mockingbird. And there was not a Black author or a Black story, not in the top 10, not in the top 20, but The Color Purple ranked like 35 on the list. And that really disappointed me, that like a story by a Black woman and about the Black experience was so low on the totem pole. So it's really important that we do continue to tell our stories, because they're important that we tell them, not that anybody else can, come in and tell our stories for us. So just keep writing, and your stories are valid, they're valuable, and I was so pleased to hear such great stories today, such great poems. And I'm not really into poetry, but I think I want to kind of delve into it a little bit now based on hearing you guys' awesome work. So yeah, I'm just so glad for this opportunity. Thank you so much, Dr. Webb, for everything that you've done with this. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you all for writing your stories and sharing it.
And the appreciation is very much mutual, and I hope you continue to write and continue to share. And I look forward to reading other stuff you write in the future as well.
Thank you. Bye, you guys.
Bye. All right, Monique, we'll let you go ahead and say your farewell as well.
Thank you. This was really a treat and an honor. All of your work was brilliant. Thank you, Dr. Webb, for doing this. Hope it continues. Speaking of stories and taking up spaces, I'll piggyback on what the two earlier ladies had said. There's a magazine, it's called Fire Literary Magazine. It came from, I think, the fire and passion of the niggerati of Langston Hughes et al. It's now, Speculative Fiction has a slant. Primarily, it's edited by Troy L. Wiggins and Justine Ireland. They did a survey trying to learn how many writers are able to tell stories when it comes to being non-white, whether they're Latino descent, African from the diaspora, or I'm sorry, am I saying that wrong? Diaspora? We need more representation. So there's discussions like this, more opportunities for each other, like Dr. Webb is doing, and Ms. Ireland and Mr. Wiggins, and I'm sure there's others that are popping up all over the place. I think there's the Nightlight podcast, but just making more opportunities for us so that way we can tell our stories, whether it's realistic fiction or poetry or prose, or whether it's speculative. And I just hope this continues, and because we need it more than ever. And thank you so much, ladies. Nice to meet all of you, and hope to see you more. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye, Monique. Okay. So I haven't been keeping track of who is still left to join the call, but it's possible that if we haven't had everyone on already, that we might get some additional callers. But so with those of you who are still left, I do want to comment on this idea of like what the most popular books are and that sort of thing. So the contest, it was, low key, just a way to raise awareness about colorism, because you offer a prize and all of a sudden people pay attention, right? So people who might have said, oh, I don't want to talk about that, they might say, I might actually look into that. But so what are some ways that you do in your own lives, or things that you might start trying to do to sort of uplift these voices of people, your own, but also, making sure that other people who don't have the kind of privilege you have can also be heard and be seen and like get their stories out there, right? And so this idea that all of us have some type of privilege, and as Brianna Bennett was saying, like all of us using our privilege to make give platforms to people, right? So I used my privilege of knowledge, right, and having some education to be able to organize a contest and publish books. I use that as a service, right, to be able to publish people and to host live events like this so that people can share their stories and spread awareness about colorism. So what are some of the things that you all are doing or have done or have plans to do in the future in terms of helping to uplift each other and other people's voices?
Well, for me, I have an Instagram, so I'm dedicated.
Hold on, you're talking, Morgan. Let me raise your volume. Okay, go ahead.
So, for me, I have an Instagram which is dedicated to a different variety of poetry, especially about me particularly, and just about the Black community. I think it's important to be, activists and stuff like this, because a lot of people don't know what's going on and how it affects us. So I think that having that kind of voice will influence other people to speak out and share their stories, so that other people can know, so other people can know how they feel.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think Instagram and all social media, right, is definitely a good way to be seen, to share your voice, and to inspire other people. I think you're absolutely right. So if someone seeing you on this live stream, someone who comes across some of your Instagram posts, that does a lot of times encourage for themselves. Thank you for saying that. Others, what are other people doing or have done or planning to do?
I'll go next. I'll say something. So I have a website where I post my poetry as well. And like I said, a lot of it is involved with African-American struggles. And I know it's not just isolated to the Black community. So I think just encouraging other people to write their stories down and possibly putting it on my website. Not that it's big or anything, but I encourage my family members and friends, if they have something like that, to write it, and I can put it on there. And just I think it's really important to have conversations with people as well. I think that can go a long way to share their stories and face-to-face conversations, and having them share those stories with their friends and so on, so that the conversation can be amplified.
What's the name of your website again?
Poetic Symphony.
Poetic Symphony. Okay. So yeah, in the description to this video, by the way, I'm going to put your Instagram handles and website links too, so that people who come across this video can continue to follow all the great work that you all are doing. So other thoughts about what we can do, or what you have done as an example, or what people watching can do to help continue to raise voices around these important issues?
I'll go. So for me personally, I know that I have the confidence to submerge myself in environments where most people probably don't, or just don't feel comfortable. Especially in a place like with higher academia, and then I'm from Arizona, so most people are predominantly white or white passing, and it can be really tough to make the choice to say, I'm going to be in an environment with mostly white people. And I found myself finding that strength to do that in order to bring all of these ideas into those spaces, because those are the people that are trying to negate the conversation or trying to deny having these conversations, and you need to kind of put it in their face at this point. And even if they're not willing to have it, you kind of just have to put these ideas out there to the people that are perpetuating it, because a lot of times, or oftentimes, these people aren't even aware of what's going on, and it's because they've never been taught. And although we are not responsible to teach, I feel like if you have those resources and you can provide them and you are comfortable enough to, then by all means do that. And I found myself doing that a lot this year, and really just practicing checking my own space and checking my own privilege, because I'm aware that excuse me, sorry. I am aware that I'm not going to face the exact same struggles as a Black woman, because I do have a privilege identifying as Latinx, and I'm never going to have those same struggles, but I can definitely empathize, and I can definitely make sure that if I am in a space that is discussing these issues and there is someone there that can vouch for these issues, then I'm going to absolutely let them take the floor. I'm not going to lead the conversation when it's not even affecting me. And I think that's important too, that we make sure we're not taking up space for people that deserve to have that platform and that microphone for them. And then if those people are not in the room and if there's no one around, then you need to make sure that, I feel like you need to be that advocate for those people, not leading the movements or anything, but making sure that you are defending these other groups and being intersectional, and just checking, making sure that everything you're doing doesn't negatively impact another group of people, and just being able, like you said, being able to recognize your privilege and using it for good rather than feeling guilty about it and just sitting around and not doing anything.
Thank you. There's some really good points there.
I'll jump in now. I was going to say that I think that it's important that we use our voice to make people more aware, because the truth is a lot of people don't know. They don't know about colorism. They don't know. A lot of times people offend and honestly don't know that they have offended. So to make them aware, once they're made aware, then, you know, normally there should be a change, because we don't know the background or the experience of other people, just like they may not know the experience of you. So we have to rise above. My goal is to rise above my circumstances and the situations and the experiences, good and bad, that I've experienced in life, to be better and to help other people to be better. Because I don't want to go and leave everybody else behind. I think that we all can go. We all can be better and do better and be better as people. So I think just kind of just making a chain and just taking everybody with us, as many people that are willing to go and that are willing to be enlightened. Because the reality is everybody doesn't want to be enlightened. Some people are woke and aware and consciously just makes a decision. Okay, well, no, I didn't see that. No, they didn't say it. I don't think they really meant that. So just being aware that what you heard is really what you heard. What you saw is really what you saw, and just being more open and just kind of just putting it on out there. Like, yeah, you did hear that. Yeah, they did say that. So when you see things that are not, that you know are wrong, or that has been said, because sometimes people can send subliminal messages and say things, you know, in a little slick way. You know, like I said, people will cut you with words and then it'll be followed by fake smiles. You know, they'll give you a good glass of milk and then kick it over and smile in your face at the same time. So you have to bring that up. Oh, wait, hold up. Let's stop here. And bring it back and make them aware, make people more aware of the wrong. And just give them the opportunity to take it from there and to make the change. But to at least let them know what they did was wrong and how it was wrong and why.
That's great, Dion. Actually, I'd love to piggyback off what you said, because I think it's so important. Sharing the information is great, but not everybody wants to accept that. And that is why in my own art practice, I've grown from photography to installation making and really diving into more experiential work and interactive art, creating spaces and opportunities where people have to interact. Because oftentimes we see something, but then we're left with those thoughts. And I'm interested in engaging, you know. I think in my own art practice, I'm kind of tired of sympathy and, you know, making people feel better about a situation, and it sucks. So, for example, I have a current art project right now called Do Not Bleach. And they're art objects, they're t-shirts. It's like a t-shirt campaign where I'm actually bleaching black t-shirts with the Do Not Bleach laundry symbol. And then on the back, it says Do Not Bleach. And I've been traveling and photographing people of color in those shirts, and then also selling the shirts as a way to continue to fund the project, so that people can continue to be a part of it. But it's an opportunity for people of color in particular, to affirm themselves and affirm their skin color. It's more than skin color and bleaching, but it's also an opportunity to claim your culture. Like, do not bleach my culture, do not bleach my name, do not bleach any part of my identity that does not fit in the box in which that you want it to. And it's really exciting to hear all of the different ways people are using their platforms. I don't think that there is no particular size. I think, Vanessa, you were saying earlier about how conversation is just as valuable and just as strong, or your Instagram pages or websites. Everyone can do their part. And Sarah, you've definitely created such a beautiful platform to inspire others to continue and do the same as well. But all of us can be a part of this movement, and to help and just enlighten more people, whether they want to be enlightened or not. When you have that conversation, you plant a seed. And I think that's the most powerful thing. You just plant that seed of information, and it's going to hit them later, whether they want it to or not.
I'm going to jump in here too and just say that I've actually noticed ever since participating in this contest how many people don't know what colorism is. And I go to a predominantly white college, and I'm in a social justice class right now of all white students, and we're talking about the African American experience. And I find that highly ironic that there's not a single African American in the class to talk about the experience. And, you know, my white male professor, I asked him one day, what's colorism? And he actually didn't know. And I had to talk about that in front of him at the end of class. And I was like, maybe you should touch upon this sometime in class. And, you know, now he's kind of touched upon the fact that, like, we have to recognize that there's no diversity in the room. He's talking to a bunch of privileged that, and, you know, there's no, like, people to talk about their own experience in that class. Like, we have to recognize where we are as individuals and, like, where we're speaking from. And I think that, you know, the more I've asked my friends, I'm like, do you know what colorism is? And they're like, oh, is that about, like, coloring? Like, and, like, quite literally, like, using utensils or, like, I'm like, no, colorism. And when I speak upon it more, you know, I feel like I'm helping educate people around me. But I think, you know, just hearing you all today, I feel like have learned something, and I feel like it's important. I'm glad I was here to hear the other poems read aloud. And I've been looking through the book, and it's just really inspiring and things to hear about other experiences. So.
So you notice I'm pausing more, doing the teacher thing, right? Where I pause more in case anyone's like hesitating, maybe about to speak. But I think, yeah, I'm really, I'm not surprised that all of you, from the comments that I've heard about what you're doing and how you approach teaching other people or raising awareness or, you know, considering your own positionality, like where you stand. So I want to summarize some of the things that I've taken from what all of you have said so far. One is to believe people. So when someone is telling you a story that you have not experienced, believe them. So I went to a PWI, predominantly white institution, for my undergrad, actually for all my schooling. I remember having a conversation with a white classmate of mine. And actually, okay, I'll be honest, Black people, we say this too, right? We'll say, well, I've never experienced that, so I don't really believe you. Like, are you really telling the truth? Like, is that really a thing? Did that really happen? Are you sure you're not being too sensitive? So I love analogies. The analogy I always give is that I've never had my car broken into, right? But that doesn't mean that crime doesn't exist. Just because something has never happened to me doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? And hopefully I will never have my car broken into. So people listening, don't come break into my car. What I'm saying is it's an excuse to deny the issue. It's an excuse to dismiss the issue, right? So there are a lot of things I have not experienced. And on Friday, I used the same example about, like, my size. So even though I'm dark-skinned and I have been mistreated and ignored and discriminated against for being dark-skinned, having, you know, the short kinky hair, I'm also a thin person, right? And so I don't have to be a plus size person to see the lack of representation of plus size women in the media, right? I don't have to be plus size to know that when I go to the store and not have to think about, you know, are they going to have these dresses in my size, right? Like, that is a place of privilege. So when I hear people say, well, I can't, you know, really have this discussion. I can't be part of this discussion because I've never had that experience. I think that's a false excuse. Another thing that you guys have talked about is putting it out there even if people are not ready. And I think that is so important, because we say, oh, well, not everybody's ready. I didn't know if they were ready to say it, but putting it out there anyway, I think is really important. Something else you said is developing empathy. And so a question that I'm going to ask in a second, so be thinking about, is how do we develop that empathy, right? So how do we develop the empathy to listen to someone else's story, even if that story implies that we might be complicit, even if their story suggests that people like us might have been oppressive to them in the past, right? So how do we develop empathy even if, even at the risk of feeling guilty, right? Or feeling ashamed, right? Also advocating, being aware of who's not in the room. And I think this is so important. So just like I was saying about being aware of who's not on TV, right? Being aware of who's not on magazine covers, being aware of who's not in the room. So Brianna's comment about being in a class of all white people, I recently had this conversation when I would look at photographs and they would be all white, or there would be like a picture of a meeting or a conference and it's all white people. I always ask myself, are they okay with that? Like, are they okay with that space being an all white space? Like, is no one raising their hand and saying, hey folks, this is a problem. We need to change this. We need to do something about this. So being aware of who's not in the room, being aware of who's not represented. Also, not being satisfied if someone is struggling. And so when it comes to colorism in particular, a lot of times colorism takes a backseat to racism. We say, oh, racism is the real issue and colorism is just a distraction. You know, let's not talk about colorism because we have bigger things to deal with, right? And so I always say that if you are okay with the fact that darker skinned people of your race are not being treated fairly, as Brianna Wright's poem suggests, they're not getting a fair shot at employment, right? They are being overly profiled by police officers, right? They are getting more prison sentencing time. They have perceptions of being less intelligent, right? If you're okay with a segment of your community or a segment of your culture or a segment of your society struggling or dealing with these issues, then you're kind of being hypocritical, right? Because that's the same thing that you're saying white people are doing to other people of color, right? You're saying that racism is okay with some people having more and other people having less, right? For reasons they can't control. So to ignore colorism is essentially doing the same thing. You're okay with the fact that people are being mistreated or being oppressed in a certain way. So I'm going to throw it back to all of you now in terms of thinking about, hey, how do we develop that empathy? How do we develop that courage to sit and listen, even if it hurts us, even if it's stepping on our toes a little bit? And then also, so for those of you who did develop awareness over time, what was it for you? So like, what was the moment or the experience that helped you realize your privileged status or helped you realize that this issue went beyond your personal experience? It was actually like a systemic issue.
I can start on that. So as far as empathy goes, I think it's something that I can't really pinpoint like exactly what I've done throughout my life to be more empathetic towards other people's experiences. I think that as far as like guilt, I know from my own experience, it's kind of like the way I think of it is like, how do I feel knowing that I made this person feel guilty? And then I realized it's not my responsibility to worry about that because they're the ones who caused it. So therefore, they don't get to like play the victim in this situation. So I apply that to myself as well. So if somebody is checking me and my space and what I've said, and if I've been oppressive in any way, I make sure to think like, okay, I can't feel hurt because I hurt them. It's like, if I hurt them, they're the ones that need to heal. Like they're the ones that I've been destructive towards, and it's like I can't really blame them for feeling that way. Like you can't control if you hurt someone, you can't control how somebody else feels, but you can control your actions and you can make sure that that doesn't happen again. And if you don't want that to happen again, you just need to be willing to listen to those conversations and be willing to analyze your behavior and be like, okay, this is what I did that was wrong, and maybe you didn't have those intentions to be wrong, but if that's being called out, then make sure you like sit down with that person or maybe somebody else who has been in that position as that person, because sometimes that can be a really uncomfortable conversation to have with that person that's experiencing this from you. And just kind of sitting down and looking at the situation and thinking, okay, what did I do? What did I say? And what can I do differently from here on out? And so that's why I try to practice that as much as I can. And also just like surrounding myself around people that have either like a better understanding, I guess, or have like the same amount of passion that I do towards this. That way, if I'm not checking myself, they can be like, hey, Vanessa, like you just did this, or you're doing this, and this is what you need to do better. Like just really surrounding myself around diverse, intersectional, and passionate people that can call me out and making sure that I can feel like I can trust these people are telling me this and aren't just being like, I don't know, but like, I try to surround myself around educated and intersectional diverse people that I can count on to check me and put me in my place when I need to. And then I recognized my own privilege. It wasn't even like, I think I recognized it as at a really young age and then kind of grew with it. So as like, I grew up in a very Hispanic family, and the Hispanic community, we need to admit it and acknowledge that the Hispanic community is very anti-Black. So I first started kind of listening into that and like hearing those experiences or those comments from like my elders. And when I would listen to them speak, but then they would cry watching the news, seeing like brown people be deported, it was kind of like, wait, why are you guys crying when at these brown people on TV? But you guys were just like saying all these rude comments about these brown people at the store. Like how does that make any sense? And I would listen to them say, oh, we're different. Like, we're not the same. And I'm like, no, we are the same. Like, what are you going to say to someone who's Afro-Latino? And they would just look at me like I'm crazy. And that's kind of where I was like, I am in a position of privilege. Like, I'm never going to experience those same issues and like have or feel like everyone's against me. So that's when I kind of snapped and thought, I don't ever want to be like the stereotypical anti-Black Latina. Like, that's just not okay. Like, and then just growing up, like, I always heard people comparing Latina women to Black women, and just like, oh, like I've just always seen like that competition there, and I really have I really strive to make sure that's not at all an aspect in my life, because we're all like, at the end of the day, like, we're all at one and the same. Like, we all have our own issues, but we all should be advocating for each other. So just kind of getting to see other people act in a way I don't want to be, or in a way that just kind of disgusts me, really did show me, this is your privilege, this is where you stand. Now, what are you going to do about it? So, like, for me, like, I try to surround myself around people that can check me. I try to surround myself around educated people. I try to always just read up on theory and what's going on in the world right now. That way I can always stay well-rounded. And again, like, I'm just always going to be open to being educated and being corrected if I need to be.
Thank you. There's a lot of nuggets of wisdom in what you said, and we'll return to some of it too, but throwing it back to other panelists. Do I need to remind you of the question?
Yes.
Okay. So the question was, how do we develop empathy? And how at what point in your life, or what was the process like for you in learning to recognize this issue as something bigger than yourself, right? Even if it's recognizing your privilege, or recognizing that anytime you've been disenfranchised or made to feel less than because of your skin tone, what was your moment of consciousness, I guess, for you? Or it might not just one moment, it might have been like a series of moments, right? Like a progress, right? And so Vanessa was saying that she read books, she looked at negative examples of what she didn't want to be like, and then she, made friends and acquaintances who could also continue to teach her. So I'm wondering, what was it for other people that helped you to develop your awareness and your social consciousness about issues like colorism?
I would say with empathy, I would think we just need to put ourselves in the other person's position. So if they're a person of a different race, and if they're saying something or they have a thought process that you think is not what it should be, or not in line in what reality really is, teach them, make them more aware, and let them go from there. I think probably as a child growing up, my hair texture, this is what they considered good hair. So I had siblings that had because I used to say, even as a child, I can remember saying, like, they say, oh, well, oh, she's pretty, she has good hair. So as a child, it's kind of like, so does that mean I'm only pretty because I have good hair? And my siblings who doesn't have good hair, what they consider good hair, is their hair bad hair. So it's kind of like when people say certain things, especially as a child, you take those things and it leaves you more conflicted than when you begin, because you don't know. It's so many other possibilities of you could be the other. So it's kind of like, this one has good hair, so she's pretty. So my siblings, they're the other. What's the other? Does that mean they're bad? It just leaves too many other possibilities, and you can go a whole lifetime not knowing where you fit in, because and another adult may say, tell you something different. Oh, well, my mom had a lot of kids, so it was 9 of us. So wherever we went, my mom used to always tell us, you go together, you come back together. One couldn't go back. If 9 of us went to the store, 9 of us was coming back. So if 2 of us was lagging, that other 7 had to wait. We couldn't come back home without the rest of them. So that connection, I think, her trying to teach us how to be strong and how to stick together and be more family oriented, that helped us to grow closer as a person, but it didn't prepare us much for the world, for how the world was going to beat you up and tear you down and all those things. So I think that even coming up as a child, a lot of those things I still struggle with, even as an adult, things that I was told when I was younger. I remember, like, I have 3 kids, and my daughter, she's really, really light skinned. My 2 sons, they're darker. They're more my complexion, but my daughter, she's really, like, people always say, oh, what you're mixed with? And I'm like, she's mixed with nothing. She's black and black, And so sometimes people would get offended. And I mean, I remember when my daughter was about 3 months old, we was in Walmart, and a Caucasian lady was in the line behind us, and my daughter was in the basket, and she said, oh, she's so beautiful. Her dad must be white. And I was like, no, he's black. And she was like, oh, no, what is he? He must be, no, he's black. And this lady began to go back and forth and argue with me to tell me. I said, ma'am. And I showed her, I said, I'm married. I think I know who my husband is. I think I know who her dad is. And this ended up being a big blowout argument in Walmart. I just kind of took my stuff and left. The other people in the line started arguing with her, and it was just a big old commotion, all because, she was insistent on, no, she cannot be black from 2 black parents. So even when my daughter, a lot of times people would say things like, oh, she's cute, and not acknowledge my sons. No, they're all cute. They're all handsome. They're all good looking, because you have to give those children that affirmation, because in the world, the world tears us down so much. You have to give them something to fall back on. You have to tell them that they're beautiful. You have to tell them that they're smart, in spite of, not because of.
Thank you for sharing that. I think the family question of family, is a big one. So after other people have responded to the empathy question, and that is one of the questions I want us to address too, is like, for families, what are some of the experiences you've had or things you try to do in your family? Like, how does family, because everyone says it starts at home. And so I want to pose that question to you too at some point. But in terms of empathy, or thinking about how you developed your consciousness, your social consciousness over time, anyone else want to throw out comments in that?
I do.
All right.
So I want to add on to what Dion said. I think that empathy starts with, putting yourself in someone's shoes. Especially, I feel like you can't blame that person, but you have to understand that they don't know. So it's a matter of just teaching them. I know that, like, with social media, it has a big influence on how people perceive others, because you see, models and influencers of lighter skin tone. So that's kind of what other, Black girls or boys aspire to be, and that they don't accept their own beauty because they see someone else and what someone else praises as beautiful. So they don't have a chance to, accept themselves. And then also, like, I know a couple years back where I seen like a Twitter war was between, like, it was like black girls versus light skinned girls versus dark skinned girls and brown skinned girls, which it kind of like makes us separate ourselves from like this when we're all one and the same and we're all like, Black. So I feel like, just being able to teach that to other people because they don't ultimately know. And I feel like a lot of times we think that they know like what's going on in society, but they really don't. So that's kind of like our job to like teach them so that way they can share that with others so that it can change. So this colorism won't exist. So,
I struggle with empathy. I struggle with empathy because just thinking about like the bare bones of what it means, like the ability to share feelings of other people. And, I wish it was as easy as just putting yourself in someone else's shoes, because not a lot of people are raised to even do that. Not a lot of people are comfortable or used to seeing things through other people's eyes, especially when we live in bubbles, we live in isolated communities. We take what we see on television and in magazines for face value, and we take that to be true. So it's really hard to push forward empathy. I think it's harder than we think. For me, my aha moment, if you will, was actually when I was working overseas. So I worked on a cruise ship as a photographer, and I sailed the Western Mediterranean and also the Caribbean as well. And for me, that was the first time that I was surrounded by so many people of color from different countries. So for me, that was the mind-blowing moment because it was something that I knew about, I was aware of. I mean, I knew that civilization started in Africa, right? And that through migration, we all just sprawled out from there. In some way, shape, or form, we are all a part of this diaspora. But when I got to know those people, whether they were from Colombia or Venezuela or England or Switzerland or South Africa or Ghana, they all had stories of how they have been divided within their own communities or within their own country because of the color of their skin. And that made me go on I'm still on it, on a long-term deep dive of research of the inferiority of dark skin, period. Because colorism is global. And I would be remiss to say that it would ever go away. Because just as colorism is a branch of racism, it is in the fabric of all of us. And the standards that we have, a lot of the roots of racism are rooted in colorism. Our beauty standards being, European based, and our preferences, no matter where. I'm so excited that we got to hear in this call, to hear from so many Latinx women, because a lot of my research has also been based out of Mexico as well. So understanding how far out it goes, and that, it's also not just a beauty thing. In Asian cultures, it's a class thing. And actually here in the US, it's a class thing too, because if you think about it, our white counterparts love to tan, So it's like you want to discriminate against being brown and, having excess melanin. No, we have just the right amount, right? But for them, it's also a class thing. To be tanner in America, right? To be tanner means that you have leisure and you have the money and the finances to go to the beach and go to exotic locations, right? And get sun, opposed to someone who's more pale. However, you don't want to be, as a white person, you don't want to be too dark, right? Because then you don't want to be associated with being Latin American or African American. God forbid, you're that dark. So all of these moments have taken me down these different trajectories of research and looking into it. And the more I learn, the harder it is for me to figure out empathy or to even care about sympathy, because I'm all about action. We need to engage. Everybody needs to engage. I loved what you said about your class and it being all white and your white male professor teaching about social justice. And in the wake of Black Lives Matter movement and all of these other movements as well, Black Girl Magic, you know, it's a trending topic in universities. You know, like I said before, I just left a university culture, but these social justice classes, you know, and these conversations or these conferences or these workshops where people of color are not represented, are you really helping? And is it doing anything? Is it moving the conversation forward? Are you planting seeds? Maybe, but in order for us to really empathize, I feel like the power is just sharing personal stories. Not necessarily spending time trying to convince someone of your truth. Your truth is your truth, and you have ownership of that. But by sharing our personal stories by way of writing or social media or what have you, people are going to come across those. And to see the abundance of them, I mean, look at this book and all these stories. The abundance is enough, and repetition is enough. And all of those things will definitely catch on and add up.
Yeah, I agree completely with what Stephanie said. I think there's so much importance in sharing stories and not only like conversation and dialogue and just even this live stream broadcast right now. I think anyone that's coming across this and watching is just, they're probably very impacted in their learning. And I think that's so important. You mentioned earlier about how people can be stuck in these bubbles and it can be harder to find empathy when you're in that bubble. And I completely see where you're coming from that, because in my hometown, I can see how there's like a bubble there. I think I went to school with maybe like 3 African-American students in high school. So it's ridiculous to think that we don't even realize what we're not being exposed to and like those levels of diversity. And I think when I came to college, even though my school was still predominantly white, it's somehow more diversity. And so I really didn't realize the impact of being in a diverse environment until I went to the Dominican Republic 1 year in high school. And I was out there and I realized that, people get stuck in these bubbles, like you said. And it's definitely like a learning curve, and people have to get used to branching out and going into other areas and meeting other people. Try to go into other communities of color and talk with people that I don't normally get exposed to, because I think that everybody has different stories to offer. So
so I'm going to jump in. I think actually what Brianna just said relates back to something I heard when Vanessa was speaking as well, which is taking the initiative, right? So Stephanie said she liked action, right? So all of you are talking about using your agency and taking the initiative to educate yourself, right? Whether that education comes through meeting someone who has a different experience, whether the education be from reading books or from taking a class or from getting a job on a cruise ship, right? You are taking initiative, using agency to surround yourself with people that you can learn from, right? Either because they're more experienced than you, or simply because they have an experience that you don't have, right? So there's degrees of experience, and then there's like varieties of experiences that people have. So I think that's definitely an important piece in terms of addressing colorism. And so Stephanie mentioned that we'll never be done with it, but I also don't want us to feel like, oh, that's just the way it is, and so I'm just gonna go on about my business, right? So even if there will always be people who are discriminating, and people make that argument a lot, like, well, someone's always gonna hate you, or someone's always gonna discriminate, so why do anything, right? And I'm definitely not advocating for that mindset either, and I think we can all make the difference that we can make. So I'm really glad to hear all of you saying that. In terms of empathy, I'm thinking too, and Stephanie, thank you for admitting that empathy is hard. So yeah, sometimes you just don't want to empathize.
Right.
Sometimes you just are not in the right headspace to be patient and to empathize with people. And I think there are strategies, right, that you can use to mitigate some of that. In terms of, because people always ask, you know, I want to talk about colorism, but people get so defensive, or people get so heated, or everyone has their barriers up and no one's really listening. Everyone's going through the oppression Olympics to see who has it worse and who has it, you know, better, and that sort of thing. And I think empathy too is, we think about the underlying feelings that someone is experiencing. We realize we do know what they're going through, right? So we might say, well, I'm not light-skinned, so I can't empathize with a light-skinned girl, right? Or, you know, I don't have, I'm not of Latin heritage, so I can't empathize with somebody who comes from a Spanish-speaking country, right? But in reality, like, regardless of who you are, like, we've all felt fear. We've all felt invisible, right, or unseen at some point. We've all experienced the need to want to be loved, right? And so I think a strategy for getting towards empathy, even though it's difficult, right? So I'm not saying that it's easy to do this, but a strategy is to search for the underlying emotion that that person is experiencing, right? Like hurt or rejection, right? Like we can kind of say, okay, I don't know what it's like to be you, but I have been rejected, right? Or I have been made to feel less, right? So I think that's definitely a strategy I would say in terms of empathy, is like, don't focus on the surface details of what they're saying, but like think about what's the core emotion there that they are manifesting or expressing. And I definitely think that helps us get towards empathy in a lot of ways. So I have questions. Do any of you have questions? Let me put that out there, because again, I don't want to monopolize the conversation at all. So if any of you have questions, just raise your hand.
Well, I don't have a question, but I do actually have to go. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna log out of the video, but I just want to say thank you again to everyone that read their poems. I feel impassioned reading them. I'm looking forward to reading more of them in the book. I hope you have a great rest of the broadcast.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. All right. So in thinking about the family question that I want to go back to, so you can talk about, can any of you talk about your experiences, who hasn't already talked about that, in terms of family and this idea that it does start at home? And what words would you have for someone who is witnessing colorism within their family, whether it be a sibling or a parent or an extended family member, like an aunt or a grandmother? So maybe you've also dealt with that in your own family, or maybe you are a parent or you have a sibling who dealt with it. What stories and bits of wisdom or advice can we give to people in terms of trying to address colorism within our own families?
Well, for me, that's where I received the most heat from. So all of like, so when you're Latinx, you can be literally, you can look anything. Like nobody is one color or one thing. Or so my family grew up very blonde, very blue-eyed or green-eyed, very tall, thin, very Eurocentric features, because to be Latinx or to be Mexican of Mexican descent is European and indigenous, and some kind of weird mix of that. That's very, very general, very, very simplified, but at the end of the, like, that's pretty much what it is. And so some people get more of one, some people get more of another. And most of my family, you look at them and you, like, people have asked, like, oh, are you adopted? And so, like, you see my mom and she's very, like, porcelain skin, or so are my cousins. And so I received most of that, like, hate or that negativity from them growing up. So, like, oftentimes I was told, like, how I said in my piece, like, oh, you better not go outside, like, you're going to get darker. Or sometimes I would even get comments saying, like, oh, like, you belong on the reservation, like, things like that. And it was like, at first when you're growing up, it's like, oh, these are just like kids, like, just playing around. But then that treatment, that mistreatment as kids kind of stems into like when you grow up, everyone was surprised, like for me when we were all teenagers, that I got into a university, that I got into multiple Ivy League or advanced universities, and everyone was kind of like, you did? Like, we didn't. And it was like, at first it was like, oh, it's just hatred. But then after a while, after analyzing my experiences with them, like, this is because I don't look like them. This is because I look like someone that shouldn't be accomplishing things or shouldn't be in my position. And I've just kind of always grown up with that, like, nopal en la frente idea, which is like, I don't know if anyone's touched on this, but that saying means you have a prickly pear on your forehead, which means you look too indigenous. So that's how, like, I've always been treated. And that always stemmed from my own family. And as I got older, as I was able to finally analyze, like, what colorism is and what the mistreatment of indigenous people or indigenous folks in Mexico and in the United States, and just that entire experience as a whole, I was able to kind of give back to my family. And it eventually boiled down to, like, all right, I can either educate you and you can accept it and we can, like, undo this colorism mindset that you have, or we're going to have to sever ties, because I'm not going to sit and allow you to mistreat me for another 19 years. And unfortunately, that's how I had to, like, I've had to cut off my own family because they couldn't, like, how, like, I don't remember who was saying, like, some people don't want to listen. And it was like, all right, like, I've tried, I've done everything I could. And at this point, I shouldn't have to be victim to your mistreatment. And so it did boil down to having to cut a lot of people off. But I was also very lucky to keep a lot of members that did want to learn and did want to educate themselves. And it was really interesting to see that, because then I could also learn and how I treat other people. And I think that opened a lot of doors to really understanding, like, who I am culturally, who my like, where are my roots ancestrally, and undoing that insecurity of, like, oh my gosh, I don't look blonde or have blue or green eyes like my cousins, and so I'm ugly. And I grew up with that. Like, I remember I looked up a tutorial on how to bleach your skin, and I like would put lemon juice all over myself because I wanted to be lighter so bad. And, like, that's so unhealthy, both physically and mentally. And so just undoing that from your own family was a really big process. But I think I've come a long way. I think I've really embraced being, like, a darker Latinx, and really embracing those indigenous roots has been one of the most empowering things for me.
I can say that for me and my family, I think colorism, there have been some aspects of it, but more so because of not understanding the concept of it. For example, a lot of people in my family, we do have long hair, even though we have all different textures of hair. But there's always, like, this competition of, like, whose hair is the longest. And, like, if you're lighter, your hair is, like, expected to be longer. So it's like a surprise that someone with browner, a darker tint of melanin might have longer hair. And I experienced that in school as well, especially middle school. And also, I'd say my siblings and I were, like, different colors, like, and some people don't understand that that's possible within a family, that you can have different skin tones within your immediate family. So a lot of people thought, like, one of my sisters was my friend or cousin or something like that. And that's kind of hard to explain to some people. So yeah, I think just my family's really open to learning about these things. So as long as I can take what information I have and teach them about these things, and then they'll change their mindset about that stuff. So they're really open to changing their minds about those things.
Mm-hmm. I'm in a similar boat as you. I'm the last of 5, and we're all varying shades of brown. My oldest sister being the lightest of them all. And I'm the darkest of them all. And I didn't even realize that it bothered me until I was a teenager. It was always normally a hair thing. I was the only girl out of 3 to have natural hair. Everyone else had, like, chemically processed hair as well. So my hair routine was always very different. But I also found it got to a point after, like how I was saying, I delved into all this research, got to a point where someone asked me, well, where do you fit? Stephanie, you've done all this research, you're talking about Afro-Latinx people and Asian cultures and, you know, people in Ghana. But how about, you know, and I've even talked about, you know, the discrimination of skin color in Jamaica too. But where do you fit, Stephanie? And I had this moment where I was just thinking that it was all from my siblings. All of my biases, envy, you know, desiring my oldest sister's light skin. I remember being, actually, someone, you just mentioned how it's hard to explain how you can have different skin colors. I mean, beyond it just being DNA and genetic, we also should remember that skin color is environmental. And I remember being so angry that my oldest brother, when he used to be darker than me, and then he moved to Chicago, and living in Chicago, he actually got lighter. And that wasn't something he like sought out to do, right? But it's an environmental change. It can happen. You know, you can also ask lots of light-skinned people. I've got a good friend of mine. She's got one foundation for the summer and another foundation for the winter because her skin color changes. But I remember being so angry. I was like, do I need to move to a colder climate just so I can be lighter? But realizing where it stemmed from was a big part of my own healing process with dealing with colorism. And just going back to kind of the root of the idea of the family, a lot of people, from what I've noticed, a lot of their stories, a lot of their first moments of feeling inferior happened in the home. It happened in a family setting. And as angry as you want to be about that and how sad that might be, you know, at the moment of that happening, now that I'm older, I'm able to find ways to combat that. So I combat any colorism or skin color hating or hair hating with questions. And I also think about, you know, the era that they grew up in. So if an aunt of mine would always be like, oh, are you going to fix your hair? Like when I would wear my hair out in a fro, and I'm just like, it is fixed. I detangled and moisturized, like my hair's ready, you know, and just like, no, your hair's not proper. But you have to think about the era in which these people came from and that they grew up in and how strict beauty standards were. It was more than about being beautiful. You needed to look a certain way just to get a job, just to even get your foot in the door. And because we're taking up spaces, right, and we're making all these motions and movements to move forward, I think it's so important to continue to stand our ground, not just on colorism, but just with all aspects of our identity, for work, for school, and don't conform. Because every time you conform and you try to put on that costume or put on that mask, you are allowing colorism to win. You are allowing these Eurocentric standards to win, and they don't need to.
Okay, so in my response to that, what you all have said, and I think I'm always like inspired when you all share yet another aspect of your story. So like you say so much in your initial introduction and reading your poems, and then as we continue to talk, I learn even more about each of you, and you have even more insights that just pile on top of each other, which I think is a beautiful thing. And I think all of you talked about this issue of having to overcome family conditioning of some sort. Because a lot of times people are dismissive. So when I'm talking to people about colors music, like in a workshop or something, they'll say, oh, well, they should be getting that at home. They should be getting that at home. And it's like, yes, we should get that at home. But what do we do if we did not get that at home, right? So what about the people who had loving parents, but who unintentionally are, in some cases, family members are intentionally colorist or, you know, prejudiced in various ways. But it's ideal, right? In a perfect situation, you would get all the love and, you know, affirmation and self-esteem building that you can possibly get from your family, right? Your immediate family or your extended family. But the reality is that a lot of us are being hurt by our families, especially when it comes to things like colorism. And again, I'm not saying it's like abusive or like intentional all the time. You know, like Stephanie mentioned, it is sometimes just a product of their own conditioning, the way they were brought up, right? But a lot of times, like the healing part does have to go back a lot of times to like those very original roots, like within the family. So I'm glad that all of you, acknowledge that it's possible to overcome that conditioning. And I love what each of you said about teachable moments, right? And being able to confront your family and seeing if they're willing to change, you know, telling them how you feel and getting to a point where you have some courage and feel confident enough about doing that. And then Vanessa was saying how even having to distance yourself from family members who aren't willing to change or aren't willing to listen, I think that's a testament to self-care, right? You know, protecting your emotional health, your mental health, yes. Right? And not, you know, just having to love people from a distance. You know, I listen to a lot of Lisa Nichols, and she says you have to love people from a distance because you can't allow yourself to continue to be re-triggered and re-wounded, right? Because that impedes the healing process. So you do have to like sometimes get out of the environment or change your environment in order to continue to heal and move forward with yourself. So we are at 5:49. I want to make sure we have time to officially wrap up. So I do want to thank everyone who has tuned in so far. People who are still watching, don't leave yet, because each of these ladies on the call will get a chance to say their, you know, final words for this piece. And remember that I will include their information in the description of this video so that you can continue to follow their amazing work. Super inspiring individuals and talented writers and artists of various sorts and professionals and pharmacists. I just love it. I love the diversity. Okay. But I will say that there will not be a writing contest in 2019. I am considering, you know, letting this be the final writing contest, but it could possibly come back. But 2019, it definitely will not come back. But I will be doing an art exhibit at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington on colorism. So that will be my big 2019 project. And that's actually coming early in 2019 in February, the end of February through the beginning of April. And also remember that this will be recorded. So after this, continue to share the book with people. This is my proof copy. That's why it has this gray stripe across it. But yeah, this, you know, is a resource. And I think the collective of all these stories, I think is really powerful, as we've seen just from this live call. And it's been a pleasure. I always get sentimental when I'm saying goodbye. So thank you all, ladies, authors, writers, scholars. And, you know, I could keep talking for hours about this, and I could keep listening for hours to all of you. But to respect everyone's time, the viewers as well as yours, I'm going to allow each of you to say, you know, goodbye to people who are watching, or where they can continue to follow your work. And words of encouragement you have for people, or advice for people who might want to address colorism in their own communities or families and that sort of thing. So however you choose to part ways, the floor is all yours. You don't want to go, I know, huh?
I'll jump in. It's been great. I was able to participate in the first book launch on Friday as well. So this was really great to have a double dose. My weekend's just like jam-packed of colorism. I'm just like, I'm ready, Sarah. Let's just travel and do this. But this has been great. Again, my name is Stephanie Brown. I am a practicing artist. You can follow my work on Instagram at createdbrown. You can also see my work online, stephaniebphotos.com. The t-shirt campaign I talked about, #DoNotBleach. You can also Google that, or you can go to createdbrown.com if you'd like to purchase one. or if you can always just reach out to me if you want to see where it'll be shown next. I will be exhibiting in Florida next year, so look forward to that. And just grateful for this opportunity and any moment to hear and listen to people's stories and talk about colorism. It's just so important. It touches us every day.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I'll go next. I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. I don't think I ever really took myself serious as a writer, even though I was studying to be one up until I got the email saying, hey, guess what? And so I was like, oh my God, it's just been such a amazing experience to be able to say that I got to participate in something like this with such amazing and such talented, diverse poets or writers, whatever you guys consider yourselves, artists. It's been really great having the opportunity to talk to all of you. I feel like I've learned so much from everyone. And I'm definitely going to take everyone's responses with me in the future. And hopefully, like, in my journey as an activist or whatever it is that I end up becoming, that I can take all of these experiences and just kind of share them and use them to mold myself into a better and more intersectional person. Sarah, you've been a really big help with like my own self-healing process and just really unlearning all of those colorism practices that made me so insecure in the past. And this process as a whole has just really been a really big defining moment in my healing. And I just wanted to say thank you. I don't have like any work exactly that I put out because I'm a student and I'm still just trying to get by, but I do post a lot of my writing and I do post a lot of like what I'm doing. If you ever find yourself in Tucson, Arizona or in the Arizona area, I do share a lot about like the opportunities to get involved and get active down here. So you can always find that on my Instagram, and that's Vonnet Isabel with an underscore, and she'll post it in the description. So yeah, it's been really great. Thanks.
Thank you.
I guess I'll go next.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. This is the first time I've had a real like deep conversation with people outside of my immediate circle. So I'm very appreciative of this opportunity. And I got to display my work. This is my first poem or any piece of writing that's been published as well. So it's definitely a jumpstart for me because I eventually want to have my own poetry book. And I just want to be talking about issues that affect people of color. And I think this has really inspired me to continue on that journey. And thank you everyone for sharing your work. I didn't get to hear everyone's, but hopefully, who knows, we can stay in contact and keep the conversation going and see what we can do together to keep this conversation going. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I can go next. So thank you for this opportunity. I think it was a great start to like my career because I doubted myself a lot with my writing because I was scared to put it out. So I'm glad that I, clicked that submit button. So I actually expanded just from this piece, which my Instagram. So you guys can follow it if you would like, Poetic Rebel _ sometime, hopefully next year, I'm hoping to get merchandise out with some of my quotes that just on shirts and other things. So that would be great. If you guys could follow me, we can support each other because that's always important, supporting other writers.
Yes.
So thank you.
I guess it's my turn. I want to thank you so much, Ms. Sarah, for this opportunity. It's been great. I never expected a million years, million moons, that I would even be this far. I've written several poems. I have people told me, oh, you need to get that published. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. Never really thought I was that good. I actually wrote a children's book about, oh Lord, I don't know how many years ago, haven't got it published. So this has finally gave me my jump start, my inspiration to really go ahead and get it done and stop sitting on it. And I'm just glad to be around just a circle of like-minded people that's moving in the right direction. Just keep moving forward.
Thank you all. I think you all are brilliant. And I know that you are going to continue to do more. Continue, and I say continue intentionally because I want you to acknowledge for yourselves that you already have done so much for the cause, right? The cause broadly, writ. Each of you, even if this was the first thing you've done, that in and of itself is already so much, like being willing to speak up. But as you all have stated, you've done so much already. And I think you're great examples for people. And I know that people who are watching and who are going to read your pieces are going to be inspired to take action as well, right? And so courage is contagious. And so thank you all for being courageous and being willing to step out there and set that example. And I am definitely going to miss this interaction with all of you, because this is the finale for the 2018 Colorism Healing Writing Contest, and it's actually emailing all of you. I know you know more emails from me. I'm sure that's probably a relief too. But like wrapping this up this year, I just want to say, like, I am glad that the contest has meant something to you, but know that it means just as much to me too, because this is also a part of my healing, right? Colorism Healing, I entitled that because I recognized in myself the need to heal, basically, and to overcome my lingering insecurities that I thought were just a childhood thing, and then something would happen as an adult, and I'm like, oh, I'm still not over that? Okay, yeah, let me come back and deal with this, So I appreciate all of you, and I'm glad that we, amongst all of us, and even people the writers who could not participate in any of the live calls, people had work schedules. We do have people, in Australia and India, so they're in Canada, there are time differences, and just other obligations. Some people might be on vacation, or just not be interested in the technology piece. So thank you to every writer who has submitted to the Colorism Healing Contest ever, because all of you have changed my life for the better, definitely. So on that note, continue to go forth and shine bright. And I look forward to seeing your name somewhere in the webs again in the near future. Bye.
Bye.